While we were all on our phones anyway, waiting for Kyle Tucker news, Steve Cohen decided to send the fan base into a little bit of a frenzy.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network on this special live stream. We're just reacting to the Kyle Tucker craziness. Steve Cohen has been tweeting, and I'm going to talk about what he's been tweeting, and I will get to some of your comments in a second segment. Before we get to any of it, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. We cover the New York Mets on this show. Since the 2019 season, this is the #1 daily podcast on the New York Mets. If you want to see some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief, and where I updated my contract predictions article today. My prediction, I changed it. No longer do I have Tucker to the Blue Jays. I predicted Kyle Tucker to the Mets on a 5-year, $250 million deal, because this is getting crazy. Steve Cohen tweeted this out at 6:57, so a little over an hour ago now. Let me know when you see smoke. What does that mean? None of us know, and we're all just waiting for Jeff Passan and in all caps, breaking Kyle Tucker signs with X team. And maybe Steve Cohen is doing the exact same thing. His follow-up tweet that came, I don't have a time. Well, it's 5 minutes ago. I pulled it was probably 10 minutes ago. So probably about an hour later, after he had dropped the bomb and just watched all of us kind of scurry, he sends this out. For those who don't understand the pop election reference, we are waiting for a decision. That's all I know. Okay. So he didn't allude to anything when he said, let me know when you see smoke. He, just like all of us, is waiting to see smoke, is waiting to see what happens, waiting to see what the decision is going to be. But to me, the fact that we thought that this was going to get wrapped up, maybe even last night, and then it bled out until today. And then we thought, okay, at some point during the day, we'll get the Kyle Tucker news. And it's bleeding into the night. And then John Heyman goes, oh, well, it might actually go into tomorrow. Here's what I'll tell you. Steve Cohen has made Kyle Tucker a lot of money. That's what I'll tell you. One way or the other. Either he's a Met or he's a Blue Jay. Sure, the Dodgers have been quote unquote in this, but it feels like it's one of those two teams. And it feels like it's either going to be a contract where Kyle Tucker is making an absurd amount of money per year with the New York Mets, where he's making 50 while Juan Soto is making 51, or the Blue Jays are going to get pushed to a point that they weren't expecting to have to go to, and the Mets really ruined their parade, their party. They ruined their off season where they've just got whatever they've wanted because they were expecting that they were the only team that was in on Kyle Tucker for 10 years, and they were just going to wait out the market, and maybe they'd sign a nice tidy $300 million deal for Kyle Tucker. And now, the more that the Mets are pushing this, the more that the Blue Jays up their offer and Kyle Tucker's ready to accept, but his agent calls the Mets one more time, and Steve Cohen says, you know what? I want to see some smoke. Let's throw a fourth year on that. No, that's not enough. How about a fifth year? Who knows where this goes? Who knows what the Mets' final offer is, what the Blue Jays' final offer is, but I will tell you that the Blue Jays' final offer is going to be a lot more than we would have expected 2 weeks ago. And the Mets are stretching this a lot further than we thought, because at one point it was, oh, maybe they'll sign Tucker for a 2 or 3 year deal. Well, now the report was already they're at 4. And that's why when I made my prediction, I said 5, because when Steve Cohen gets involved at this level, just like last year where the Juan Soto bidding got crazy, you just never know. Once he gets his mind set on something, he might think, okay, if we're already going to do 3 years, why not 4? What's stopping him from going to 5? And that's what I talked about on this morning show too. And that's why I wrote the prediction, 5 years, 250. Because I just think if you're already at 4 for 200 and you get another chance to bid and the Blue Jays went further and they're ready to take the Blue Jays offer, why not throw another year and just see what happens, especially if the expectations are that this guy is going to get opt-outs in this contract. Now, I think if it's a 5-year deal, it's not coming until after the second or third year. But still, the expectation that if he has 3 great seasons with you and opts out, who cares if it was a 4-year deal that is opting out of, or a 5-year deal, or a 6-year deal? Like, I honestly have no gauge anymore on where the Mets offer is going to go. We know that it was reportedly at $50 million per. We know that it's now at 4 years, apparently, but that could end up scaling up. And I think if you start to talk yourself into what this player is going to do for your team in the upcoming season with a pending lockout, and you want to win now, you start to talk yourself into some things, and maybe the Mets put a crazy offer on the table. I'm doing a quick refresh just to make sure nothing happened, because you're always on edge when, the owner tweets out. I still can't believe he said this. Like, you have to give Steve Cohen credit. This franchise, personally, I'll say for sure, has gotten so much more entertaining over the past 5 years. I'm so glad that I took over the show. I didn't took over. We launched the show in 2019, and I had the Wilpon Mets that I got to cover for a year in a COVID season. And I'm so happy that that changed over, and I've gotten to enjoy the last 5 years of Steve Cohen, because he keeps things engaging. He keeps things exciting. So when we're sitting here waiting to see if the Mets can, out of nowhere, land the top free agent on the board, which nobody expected, and they're putting out contracts that are worth $50 million per year, even if the Mets don't sign this guy, the fan base needs to appreciate how awesome this owner is, because there's so few like him. He really is one of a kind, but you only have so few ownership groups that can put offers like this on the table, that can even entertain this. I mean, the Dodgers might have bowed out by now because they're thinking $50 million a year, and they're giving him 4 years. That's crazy. We're not going to do that. We don't have to do that. Well, the Mets say, you know what? Let's go for it. And I respect the push, regardless of what happens. Will I be disappointed if in 5 minutes or in 2 minutes or in 30 seconds, the tweet comes out that he's signing with the Blue Jays on a 10-year, $350 million deal? Sure, I'll be disappointed, because I want to see Kyle Tucker and Juan Soto hit back-to-back in the Mets lineup. But am I going to fault Steve Cohen, David Stearns, anybody for not pulling this off, when pulling this off is so unbelievable? No. And I think the one thing that you have to wonder at this point is, what does Kyle Tucker want? And does Kyle Tucker want to be a New York Met? Does he actually want that spotlight? And if he doesn't, but the Mets bid so much that he takes the offer, you do wonder how he's going to perform. But you also have a guy that clutch situations throughout his career has performed very well. Seems like he's a laid-back guy. Sometimes that can work in New York. So I'm not too concerned about it, but it is just interesting to wonder, or just think about what the behind the scenes is between Kyle Tucker, his agent, the Blue Jays. If this was a marriage they always sort of thought was going to happen and he was happy with it, but they were just trying to wait for some team to step up and create a bidding war, which the Mets are doing, it's one of those things where you might have just been happy to entertain the Mets to drive up the price, but then the Mets get so aggressive that ultimately you just think, well, man, if they want me this much and I'm going to make $50 million a year potentially for 5 years, who knows? Then at a certain point, if your offer is, well, 5 for $250 or 10 for $350, you just think to yourself, can I beat $100 million on my next contract? And if the answer is yes, or if you can opt out of the $250 after 2 years, and then you can beat the $350 and get maybe another $350 the next time around 2 years from now, after collecting $100 million from the Mets, for your career, it still really could be the best move. So it's fascinating where we're at. I want to take a look at some comments. So fire away any questions that you got. I will get to all of those here in just a minute. All right, so let's look at what we got here. 6 for 300, opt out after 3 and 5. I've thought about that. I have thought about that, where like, would the Mets get to a point where they throw a 6-year on it? I don't think so, but You never know. I mean, you really never know. Once you get to 5, you can get to 6. So we'll see. We know how Cohen goes scorched earth when he doesn't get his guy, but is there anyone else worth spending on? Perhaps we wreck the Yankees' belly negotiations. So I don't think that the pivot here is Cody Bellinger. And I think a lot of times we just think, all right, you didn't get this outfielder, go to the next one. From what has been reported and from what we just saw the Red Sox do, where they miss out on Alex Bregman and then they end up pivoting to Ranger Suarez, I think you just pivot your resources to the free agent you like the most on the board next. And if I had to guess, if the Mets had a big board in their front office of the free agents they like the most, I think it would be Kyle Tucker, clear number 1. I think Framber Valdez is number 2. So I think if the Mets don't get Tucker, they're going to shift their focus to Framber, and maybe it's paying Framber a ton on a 3-year deal. Maybe it's a similar strategy, but you're overwhelming Framber instead. That's where I think they would turn their attention, or to a Freddie Peralta trade. The thing is, if it is a Freddie Peralta trade, you can then spend on that trade in the sense that after you trade for Peralta, you can extend him. So I think the Mets probably give out a big contract this offseason. I think it's one of those 3 guys. So we'll see. Knowing the Mets, we will get second half Tucker, 2025 Tucker all year. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the second half for Kyle Tucker, because Kyle Tucker, he had a hair, I think it was a hand fracture or a thumb. It was a finger. He got hit in the hand, played through it for a while. That really dropped his numbers. They gave him a little bit of a rest, I think both physically and a mental reset, brought up Owen Casey. I think it was only like a 4 or 5 days where I don't think they put him on the IL. And then he came back and was awesome again. And then he had like a leg injury. Now, yes, I just mentioned 2 injuries, but if you look at why he missed time the last couple of years, it's been more freak things, fouling a ball off his shin and breaking his shin, and the hand thing. I'm not too concerned about the health. And ultimately, when this guy has been on the field, he has been really good. Honestly, why not offer Bellinger a similar deal? I sort of mentioned it in the other question, but for Cody Bellinger, to me, the thing is, Bellinger has indicated at this point that he wants a long-term deal. So if the Yankees are already at 5 for 150, maybe that's why the Mets ultimately were able or decided to focus more on Tucker. Maybe when that was reported, they sort of realized where the Yankees were at and knew that they weren't going to be able to convince Cody Bellinger to sign a 3-year deal, because the Yankees already put 5 on the table at a good AAV. So to get in the bidding, you have to go more years, and they don't want to go to 6-7 years for Cody Bellinger. So I don't think Bellinger would take this type of a deal. I don't think Bellinger is as good of a player either. Like I think it'd be crazy to pay Cody Bellinger $50 million for even 1 year. I mean, it's just I think that these 2 players through free agency have been bunched a little bit closer together than I think they really are. I think Kyle Tucker, especially as a hitter, is just a much better, player. Fred and Jeff Wilpon would never tweet that fire. No, Jeff Wilpon was pretty much hiding, and all the years I remember of his ownership. Is pivot Belly, Valdez, or trade for Duran? I think you probably made Peralta, but for me, I think the pivot might be Valdez, because that market might move quick. So you don't want to, who knows how far down the road they are in the Peralta trade negotiations. But to me, I think if you don't want to miss out on Framber, then the Yankees trade for Peralta, and now you got nothing you can go to. So because theoretically you could sign Framber and still trade for Freddie. Like it doesn't have to be one or the other. It probably is, but it doesn't have to be. Let's see what we got. Would you give Tucker some type of big signing bonus? I talked about this on my show. For me, I think the first year, I expect to see a big signing bonus. Like I expect that $50 million, 25 of it he might get up front in a signing bonus. That's what they did with Juan Soto. That was another wrinkle to that contract. He had a $75 million signing bonus. Now, I don't think that was all paid out at once. I don't know if this would all get paid out at once, but I'm sure he would get a big chunk of change right after signing on the dotted line. If it's not Bellinger, it has to be a trade for an outfielder. We've talked about this on the show as well, but I think the Jarren Duran trade is best case scenario. I I don't know at this point if the Red Sox are going to trade Duran unless they're getting a really good infield. Like I think Duran's on the table for Ketel Marte, for example, right? Where you trade. That was actually the other Duran. Someone mentioned that comment before. So we'll get to it now. For some reason, when I read Duran before, I was thinking Juan Duran from the Phillies. But regardless, I think the Red Sox at this point with where their roster's at, like Brandon Sproat, what does he really do for a Red Sox team that has a ton of pitching depth? I think you could trade for Jarren Duran with Jet Williams as a headliner, and you get a guy that could be your shortstop of the future, second baseman of the future, whatever it is, a guy that probably can play for the Red Sox this upcoming season. But I think ultimately, if they trade Duran, they need to get a better bat than Duran in that lineup right now, because that Red Sox lineup, it needs more established hitters. They shouldn't be removing many. So then if you're trading for outfielder, it comes down to Luis Robert, which fans don't love, but he's an option. And I'm sure the Mets have an idea of what it would take to get him. You have Lars Nootbaar that the Mets like, and we've heard that multiple times. So I really think that they probably have a couple of trades that they could pull a trigger on now. But you don't make those trades until you know for sure that you can't swoop in and sign Kyle Tucker. And that's why those deals probably have not been made. So that's where I think they're as far as trading for an outfielder. I think there's probably a couple of deals that are already close to agreed upon where you just have to call them in, basically. From the player's point of view, with the new CBA and lockout pending, wouldn't there be a nervousness to sign the short-term high A deal because no one knows what contracts will look like after? Yes, in some respects, I think the long-term deal, obviously there's more security in that. But I don't think that a player of Kyle Tucker's caliber worries that the money's going to be there. They might institute a salary cap, but I doubt it. There's always going to be an avenue for players to spend. For teams to spend on big time players. So I don't think that I think if anything, maybe it makes you lean towards an opt-out after year 2 instead of year 1 anyway, where I can play with the Mets. I can make, who knows, maybe they front load the contract. Maybe he's making $110 million in the first 2 years, whatever it is. Or I can make $50 million a year for the first 2 years and get a $10 million buyout on an opt-out in the contract after year 2. And I can wait till the CBA has been agreed on, and then I can hit the market in 2 years. The other thing, though, about hitting the market next time is that the next 3 free agent classes I've looked at really aren't that great, particularly the next 2. So I don't know. I think Tucker, whenever he hits the market again, assuming he does hit the market again, I think that he's going to do very well. Let's see. Okay, what's the Duran trade package if this doesn't go our way? Jet, Sproat, Mauricio, Acuna. Would Beatty be a sticking point not wanting to create a hole at third base? I've thought about that because Brett Beatty is exactly who the Red Sox could want, right? You put Beatty at third immediately on that team. But if I'm the Mets, I don't want to open up a hole at third base. I do think it's Jet. I do think Mauricio makes a lot of sense for the Red Sox. I think Acuna makes sense for the Red Sox. So yeah, you have like that right there to me is probably a package a little bit too steep. I'd want to keep one of the infielders, or I'd want to trade a lesser pitching prospect. Probably, I've thought of something like Jet Williams, Jack Wenninger, and then Mauricio. I don't know if that would be enough for the Red Sox with where they're at now, needing more impact in their lineup immediately. And that's where I get to a little bit of a sticking point. Then it's, do they like Mark Vientos? Do they think Vientos could play third base? Probably not. But if they did, then maybe, Jet Williams, Mark Vientos is kind of the starting point. But I'm less and less confident that they can pull a Duran trade off at this moment. I think it's a lot more likely that if they don't get Kyle Tucker, they're not going to sign Cody Bellinger. And I think they're going to improve their pitching in a significant way. I think that they are going to create a platoon in left field or I could see the Luis Robert angle too. I could even see Lars Nootbaar and Luis Robert. So I think that the trade market's way they'd probably go to fill this outfield. My most likely target, I think, if they don't get Tucker, I really think it would be Lars Nootbaar. I think that's a guy they really like. I just want to say I am doing well. Thank you for asking. What else we got here? Does he sign tonight? Well, I mean, we're looking for the smoke from Steve Cohen, so I hope so. I hope so. Let's see. On a level of 0 to 10, how badly does Uncle Stevie want Tucker? My guess at this point, when he's gotten this involved and he's put this much on the table and this much of an effort to get a deal done, I would assume it's 9-10 range. I think that I think he wants this pretty bad. Don't like this comment. Dodger Blue is going to 3-peat. We're not putting that on the screen. Oh, this is important. Sources tell that Tucker will sign on a day ending in Y. John Heyman. Yeah, John Heyman today reporting somewhere. I think it was an MLB Network, actually. It might happen tonight. It might happen tomorrow on Kyle Tucker. That's inside sources. I mean, you know what I would say? I think that Kyle Tucker, he probably does, and this is my sources. This is what they're telling me. I think that he prefers DocuSign over actually writing his name. My sources. I don't know if it's accurate, but that's what I'm hearing. Yeah, he's going to sign at some point. Oh, interesting. The account that broke the Soto news last year just tweeted that Kyle Tucker and the Mets are closing on a deal 4 to 5 years. I mean, sometimes that's just guessing. Because I said that on the show, but I don't have any sources. But I do think that if they've gone to 4 to 5 years, what I will say about this, if they go to 4 to 5 years, I do think that the opt-out comes after year 2. I really do. Oh, here we go. That's a good question. Should we be mad about the pitching prospect they traded for IFA money? No, because of what you got with the IFA money. You got a prospect that was one of the number 2 ranked international prospect by having, by poaching from the Yankees, Wandy Asajan. So getting that shortstop prospect more valuable than a pitcher who, yes, has a lot of promise, and Franklin Gomez, left-handed arm. Some people really liked him in the system. Probably would have been. I mean, if you had to list off left-handed arms in the Met system, you got Jonathan Santucci, you got Zach Thornton. I mean, he's probably pretty high on the list. There's not a ton of lefties in the system. So yeah, it's a tough bullet, but at the same to swallow. But at the same time, like, you got $1.5 million for him. That's a ton of bonus pool money for one guy. So I think that's pretty impressive. Is Bench playing on opening day? I think 100% at this point. I think Carson Bench will be starting in center or in left. What do you think of Brenton Doyle of the Rockies as a possible center field target? He's had a high ceiling in the past. So I do like Brenton Doyle. He plays good defense. He's, I think he went 30-20, 30 stolen bases, 20 homers in 2024. Had a bad year. I wouldn't hate it. I'd like it a lot more than, I don't know. For the cost, it might be more fun than the Luis Robert trade, just because I think Chris gets it out of his mind on what he wants for Luis Robert. Can you explain how signing bonuses work? So essentially, the signing bonus is part of the total deal. So, for Juan Soto, he gets $765 million. 75 million of that was a signing bonus. That's not on top of the 765. So he got $690 million in salary over the 15 years and $75 million in a signing bonus. Sometimes, it's broken up over a certain amount of years. A lot of that's not reported of when it gets paid out and everything like that. But it does factor into the total value of the contract. And as far as the Mets are concerned, as a luxury tax team, you're always trying to figure out what their luxury tax penalty is going to be. And they take that by the total amount of money you're going to pay the player over that many years. Whatever the present day value of that contract is, they divide it up. And that's how they get the average annual value that's used in the luxury tax. So the signing bonus is blended with the salary to get to that number. Ryan percentage, what's your gut saying? Honestly, I'm 50-50, and I know that's a lame answer. It's kind of a cop-out, but I really think that what I'm 100% confident in is it's going to be a jaw-dropping number. It's either going to be, again, the Mets at 250 over 5, something crazy, or the Blue Jays are going to step up in a big way on a 10-year deal because they have planned their whole offseason with the idea that they're going to have Kyle Tucker and Vladdy as the next, building blocks of the future of Blue Jays baseball to try to get a dynasty up there, whatever it is. If they want him that bad, I could see them going far enough on the long-term deal that they win this bidding, but I think the Mets got a great shot at it. What happened to Matt Allen? I thought he was working his way back to pitching for us. He got hurt again. I think he's a minor league free agent now. So open to sign with any team. Don't think it'll be the Mets most likely. I'll take a quick swig of water and I'll answer this question. All right. You think Nick Morabito has a chance to play center field? Defensively, he's good. Defensively, Nick Morabito, I'd say probably right now of the guys AA and up, he's the best center fielder. Like, I think he's the best center fielder among the group of Carson Bench, Nick Morabito, AJ Ewing, Jet Williams. I think AJ Ewing could definitely be better, but he's still, working on being an outfielder. He's done a great job at it, and I think AJ Ewing is probably the center fielder of the future for the Mets if everything breaks right. But Nick Morabito, I think, definitely has the potential to be a fourth outfielder soon in the big leagues, and he will be able to play a good center field. I honestly am just enjoying answering the questions and doing it from format, but yes, it would be nice if the stream happened. But I'm so far behind on these comments that I swear you guys are gonna know like 2 minutes before me still, because I'm trying to get to as many of these as I can. Jose Reyes' tweet. I did not see what Jose Reyes tweeted. This is something that whatever the fallout of this situation is going to be, this is going to be a talking point. Whatever the contract offer ends up going to, if he signs or not, Mets fans, especially if not, Mets fans are going to say, imagine they do put 250 on the table and they don't get the player. Fans are going to say, you were this aggressive for Kyle Tucker. Why couldn't you be that aggressive and re-sign Pete Alonso? And it's a fair criticism because I wanted Pete Alonso back too, and I think Pete Alonso will be productive for the next 5 years. And I think offensively, just bottom line production, home runs, RBIs. Over the next 5 years, I think Pete Alonso is a better bet to produce than Kyle Tucker, just because he has proven to be incredibly durable. Not that I think Kyle Tucker has a major injury risk, but if we're just talking home run power production, I think Pete's a better source of power production, certainly a more valuable one on their respective contracts. But if we're looking at the full scope of the player, that's where you kind of have to throw all that comparison out the window, because Kyle Tucker is not just a slugging first baseman. He can go out in the outfield, hopefully play a good right field for you, which is going to increase his value, even if he plays a league average right field for you. That is significantly more valuable than a bad defensive first baseman, based on how the Mets are trying to build the team and how players are just valued in today's game. So there's a reason why Tucker makes potentially $100 million more than Pete Alonso. Part of that is market, right? If he's got a 10-year, $350 million deal on the table on the other side, it's the market that's driving the price. But I also understand the fan sentiment of, like, come on, why couldn't you just sign Pete? And I totally get that feeling, because if as messed up as it is, and I'll just show my fandom on it. If I had the ability right now to rewrite history and I can have one or the other, Tucker at 250 over 5 with opt-outs, or just a straight $150 million deal for Pete, I'd probably take Pete, because I'm a Mets fan and I wanted to see Pete Alonso stay in a Mets uniform. So call me a homer, call me crazy, because the Mets are a better team with Kyle Tucker than Pete Alonso. But I understand the sentiment of this question for sure. For me, the offseason would have been A+ in the Mets signed both Tucker and Pete, but the Mets never valued Pete. Yeah, I mean, the offseason, you would have run out of letter grades if they got both. But yeah, it would be pretty, if they got both, that would have been crazy. I thought there would have been a chance if they were, that'd be the other side of it, right? And I don't think it'll get that to the point where it would be the same money, but it would be pretty funny if the total of the two deals, like of the Mets offer ended up being close to what Bellinger and Alonso got. Because then you could really make an argument that, if you could have, for similar, a little bit more money, if you could have had Bellinger and Pete Alonso, but then again, both those guys are going to have long-term deals, and the Mets weren't going to do that. This question, Ryan, the Mets have always been connected to Robert. The reporting earlier this offseason came, may want the White Sox to eat more money. Is this because Tucker was on their mind the whole time? No, but I will. The first part of that is interesting because the Mets wanting to eat money on the deal is because the White Sox probably want a prospect that's too good. If the Mets could get Luis Robert and just take on the salary and give nothing, they would take on the money. It's a matter of if they want Mark Vientos for Luis Robert. Well, now I don't want to pay Luis Robert then. You're getting 4 years of Mark Vientos. I want you to pay $15 million of the $20 million for Robert's salary for this upcoming season. And then I'll give you a player who I deem has more value anyway than Luis Robert. So I think that's the only reason why they'd want to eat the money. We've gone beyond 30 minutes and it doesn't look like we're going to get a deal. See if there's any more pertinent questions that we haven't covered. Let's see. And I don't see any news here about Tucker. If Tucker goes to the Dodgers, Lord help us all. That's a good way to end. Last question. This guy's been good. With the Mets farm where it is, shouldn't the Mets only shop at the top of the free agent class from here on out? I think that is what the plan is. I think that's what the Dodgers do. You should not be going to mid-tier, especially it's a combination of where the system's at and the fact that you already have Soto. Like you already had the big ticket guy. So, I think you have with Soto and Lindor right now, you have all the star power you need. I think it's 1 year guys or it's guys that are on that level. Like you've set a standard on how high you should be, how high the bar should be to get a long-term contract for the New York Mets. And if you stick to that, you're not going to have bad investments on the book. So, okay, one more. Harrison Bader. What's that about? Did Bader just sign somewhere? You get a Harrison Bader deal out of nowhere? I'm going to run. All right. I see the Jose Reyes tweet now. Something big is coming. That's great. All right, guys. I appreciate hanging out. This was a fun stream. I wanted to just have a little temperature check because Steve Cohen set a fire on social media. We're all engaged. Hey, if the Mets sign Tucker in the next 10 minutes, I'll probably be back on, but I appreciate all of you for tuning into the stream and for all of you who might listen back to this. Make sure you check out whether he signs with the Mets, the Blue Jays or not, the next edition of Locked On Mets.